We are live. Hello, everyone who is tuning in either currently or in the future. My name is Loreli. I'm the Young Parents Director, and I'm here with Katie.
Hello.
Katie, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. And today we're going to have a conversation, another turning point conversation. So I always like to give a little introduction to make sure we are on the same page with what we're talking about. But just to define what we mean when I say we say turning point. Turning point is the point in your journey at which a decisive change happens, usually for the better. And I know we talked in one of these times together that it could be a good thing or a bad thing that makes us change our point of view.
Mhm.
I'm using those terms lightly, but it could be a positive or negative, maybe is a better way to express it. But in the context that we're using it is really paying attention to our feelings. In this case, is there a sense of being stuck in a certain way or feeling lost? Could that be an invitation to you to change your course, to change courses? So starting with that, today we are talking about moving from anger to peace. From anger to peace. So I didn't even think about this, but do we even know how to define anger? We use it all the time, but I haven't really thought about it.
That's a good question.
That a good and
I
tough
think
question.
I think we had a quote, but I don't know if it was a definition from Brene Brown, so it doesn't count as. Oh, yes, we do have a definition: a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility.
So it's interesting that's a strong feeling.
Yeah.
Like some feelings can be this low level sense of, a negative vibe. But I'm very interested in the fact that this is defined as a strong feeling.
Yes.
So something to pay attention to.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
anybody, I'm presuming anyone who's ever lived has felt a strong feeling of displeasure or hostility. What about you, Kate?
I think so. Definitely.
Not me personally. So we do want to dive into that because this could be a place where you feel stuck or not knowing how to do that. I know in some ways feeling angry can feel good. I have had moments where I feel good because I'm kind of gaining back my control. But if I really reflect on it, I do not like how that leaves my loved ones or anyone in the path of my anger. I'm not leaving a good impression in the world. I'm not, that feeling of that good feeling does not last to live into your anger.
Yeah, I think it's usually also a false sense of control. And then I know for me in times of anger or after an anger, an experience of anger, there's almost this settling feeling that actually I wasn't in control of the other person or whatever. And I also wasn't really in control of myself, which is, there's some shame around that. When you've allowed the anger to kind of be the driving force in whatever it is that you are reacting to.
Yes, exactly. So I want to ask the question, and if you're tuning in, I want to ask you as well. You could put it in a comment and we'll see it. Why do you think we get angry? You kind of mentioned something there, but why do we even get angry?
Yeah, I think that there is something built into us that understands when something is wrong, when something is unjust, and we want things to be right. Now, I definitely think that sometimes our perspectives of what is right can be skewed because obviously we aren't all having the same perspectives, but it's that clash of the clash of what we think is right with someone else's or with something else that's going on around us that brings out this, like you said, this strong emotion or displeasure or discomfort in us.
Yeah. We're hearing from Harley that there's a sense of frustration.
Yeah.
So relatable, like just a loss of control or the outcomes we would wish can really feed into that. So what kinds of things can trigger someone's anger? What are the types of things? I don't know.
You want a list? Well, we're parents. Our kids can bring out our anger.
Yes.
They are little individuals who don't always think the same way that we do and are learning how to exist in social settings and, in community. And so they don't always do what we think they should. And that can be frustrating. Like Harley said, it brings on frustration, and then that can lead also into further anger. I drive a lot on the Gardner, so other drivers can bring out, loss of control, Harley says. It is. It's like you're with other people, and I think that anger comes from a longing for peace, right? And so when peace, I know that resonates with me anyway. I don't know if it does with you, Loreli, but for things to be going smoothly. And so when something else triggers that peace to be broken, I don't have control over that. And there is a frustration that comes out of that for me.
That's a fascinating thought, that anger comes from a longing for peace.
I think that it does for me. Like, I like when everything is just working nicely. And usually the biggest parts of my anger come out when something has disrupted that. So traffic is an example. Like, I like when the flow of traffic, even when it's heavy traffic, there's a way that it flows. And when somebody goes against the way that it helps everybody else, and we can all sort of make it through this traffic jam peacefully, then that just really ticks me off.
That's fascinating. That seems very ironic, doesn't
it? Yes. Yes. Yes, very much so.
For me, I mean, it really is, what are our what is the outcome we each desire? And that may be different for everybody, but I'm even reflecting as you're saying that mine is about efficiency. And if people are inefficient, it brings up something in me. I don't like that about myself, but I actually think that's important. Self-awareness in this is an important thing to pay attention, because we all get angry. So paying attention to when that happens, when it's most likely to happen, is going to give you some clues into some sense of longing, or some sense of feeling out of control, that frustration, and where that comes from for you. When you feel angry, or anyone can answer this if you're online, when we feel angry, what's the outcome of that, and how do we wish we responded? Like, what would be the saintly thing to do? I kind of wonder if some people are happy they were angry, or feel proud of that, but like you said, it doesn't last.
Yeah. When you asked the definition, and I was just flipping through notes here, I found that, like, Brene Brown has this quote that says, and I'll read it: "Anger is a catalyst. It's an emotion that we need to transform into something life-giving. Courage, love, change, compassion, and justice." I think that's so, because those to me list off, I'm not sure how you just worded it, the saintly way. So in her description here, anger is something that is a catalyst. So it starts, but then moves you into something else. And obviously it doesn't always move us into something life-giving. Anger has moved people into violence, has moved people into great conflict that wasn't necessarily necessary. But I like the examples she gives of being angry at something can move you into a place of courage. And this is where the turning point stuff can happen. Is there a personal conflict that you need to be courageous to broach that subject and have a conversation, instead of letting the anger fester in you, or be passive aggressive, or, hugely explosively confrontational? Can it move you into love or compassion? So I think thinking about it as kind of anger as the starting point, because it's not wrong to be angry about things, but what is the outcome? What does it move us into is something to consider. Yeah.
Harley, thank you for being part of this and being vulnerable. She says, I wish I would respond with patience and think things through before overreacting impulsively. Yeah, I think so many of us would feel the same way. If we don't pause in the moment, we can really say things or do things that we regret. But I also want to say, back to your point, Katie, that just the idea that it can lead, it is actually inbuilt in us. It is something that God has given us, an important response. We don't have to feel ashamed. Some people attach to anger, the sense of shame, like I'm bad for feeling angry. And that is not the case. It's really dependent on what you do with it. And it can be a catalyst.
Yeah.
So like Harley was saying, wishing she could think things through before overreacting, that is a very honorable thing. Mm-hmm. You're already well on your way to tackling your anger. So the next question I have, is there a way to do that? Is there a way? Oops, that's not the right question I want to put up there, but we'll leave it now. Still figuring out how all this works. But yeah, that is there a way to avoid, minimize, or help ourselves respond the way that we want? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think some of it we've touched on a little bit. You were talking about just having some self-reflection. What is it? Like, consider about our own anger. What is it that draws us to anger? What are the situations that cause me to act out in my anger in a way that I don't like? So just kind of watching yourself and being aware of those things, and then being able to think through what are the times, what did Harley say? Yeah, what are the things that make me overreact impulsively? And what is it about those? So self-reflection is definitely part of it. For me, though, my faith plays into it in a really big way, because whether we like it or not, there's lots of things that we don't have control over and that are unjust or that do make us angry, rightfully angry. And so knowing that there is a God who is probably angry with the same things, and who has control over the justice and the outcome and all of it. So there's some surrender in being able to not just forget about my anger, but so how, for me, there's prayer involved. If it's something big, I don't always pray in traffic jams, but maybe I should. But when there's, big senses of injustice that just, like, I don't know, for me, I feel it in my stomach. Those, like, things that just put your stomach in knots. For me, there's prayer involved. Lord, what do I need to surrender? How do I need to respond to this? I don't have control. You have control. Where do I go from here? And sometimes it leads us into those places of change and compassion and justice and courage and all of those things. Yeah, I find when I can take the time to do that, it very rarely leads me into responses that never does it lead me into responses that I am shameful of after.
Yeah, it's really okay. Harley, I love your comment here. I'm going to first read it and then respond to. For me, I usually overcompensate for time and give myself slack. I don't know if I read that right. Overcompensate for time and give myself slack to make sure whatever I get angry about doesn't hinder my peace. And I'm hearing that you're letting yourself off the hook a little bit about your angry feelings. And I think that's important. And some time of reflection with that is key.
Or I wonder too, Harley, I think I might resonate with your comment. I don't know, maybe this isn't what you're saying, but that there can be some denial of the angry feelings because it's disrupting me. And I do this, if that's what you're saying. If not, I do that same thing. If there's something that I just will pretend it's not there, because it's more disruptive. It feels more disruptive for me to think about what I'm angry about and to spend that time in reflection than to actually, it feels easier to kind of push it away and deny it as much as I can than to actually self-reflect on it.
Okay, I think you read it more accurately than I did. And I can now see that maybe is what, Harley, you're saying. Tell us if we're picking up what you're putting down. And that actually speaks to the point that I wanted to make, is that we kind of think there's two options, and one is to explode or one is to bottle it up. And on our own, those might be the only two options. But back to what Katie is saying, that there is a third party. There is, just on our own, this can be impossible. It can just lead to our bottling up anger, which can do things for us physiologically, or it can come out at inopportune times. And so there's an important thing. If we're feeling anger, remembering that that is something God has given to us, and ask about what is true about this. What is it that I'm feeling is true? And then taking that to the Lord to say, Lord, what is yours to handle? And what is mine to understand?
Yes.
Because I think if it's just we're on our own, I think there are, meditation. I don't want to diminish the practices that can help us in those moments to stop and reflect and pause and respond the way we want to. But what a resource we have in God to help us. And that whole transformational part of leaning into his work in us is an important one. So that just comes to mind. And there is a verse here that I would like to bring up if I can find it. Need a tech crew. There, is it? Yes, there we go. I'll read it out. It's from the book of James in the Bible, the New Testament, chapter 1, verses 19 to 20. It does start with dear brothers and sisters. We just didn't have enough room on this. So from there, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So I'd love to ask you, Katie, what your thoughts are on that. How do we understand this?
Well, I think first of all, it doesn't say not to become angry. And that's an important point, is that, like you said before, the anger itself is no reason to feel shame. We all get angry. It is built into us. But it says to become slow to anger. And when I read this, I think these are things that I would love for my children to know, like, listen, be slow to speak, be slow to anger. And so it should also be something for me. And I think built into this, there is a verse in the Bible. It's actually the most quoted verse, and it talks all about the character traits of God, and slow to anger is one of them. And when we think about a God who is loving and who is wanting justice and yet is slow to anger, there's compassion that's built into that. There's compassion for the relationships. So when I'm slow to anger, yes, my sons might be driving me crazy, but I have compassion for them and I love them and I understand that they're learning. And so my anger towards whatever they're doing it can be slow. And I think built into this, though, is kind of a wisdom, and we've talked about this already, but kind of an ongoing change of perspective of what's driving my anger. If it's a person, because often it is a person who is, or a group of people, or a situation involving people, being slow to anger requires us to be thinking about that person as another human, as another living, breathing creation of God. And that is a big shift, and it's a humbling one to have to think of in moments of conflict and of anger, to have to think about the other person as a human, as an image bearer of God, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. I can speak from experience and say that when I act impulsively on my anger, and when I carry out the justice that I think is deserved in a particular instance, I can say, whether you believe in God or not, it doesn't usually produce the kind of behavior that we usually think of as, kind or loving or, compassionate or anything like that. It's usually just, like we've said, the things that we sort of feel shame about, exploding, and they don't usually help. It doesn't help to fully explode on my children or anything like that. So, I think there's always so much that you can dig into in scripture, but I think it really speaks to requiring us to be thinking about those around us who are causing anger or that we are in conflict with, but thinking about who God is, and thinking about this God as being one who is slow to anger and who is in control and who has compassion for us as well.
I want to pick up on that quickly, on that compassion piece, that God wants justice.
Yes. Yeah.
Not always the way we see it, but
and not always when the timing too.
The timing, what it looks like, but your concerns are his concerns, and he wants you to turn to him. That's the invitation that we're extending today about the turning point, is that you may be hanging on to your anger for a valid reason, that you have been treated poorly, you have been betrayed. I don't know your story as you're listening, but undoubtedly there has been something against you, against your dignity, your honor, your sense of fairness. And I want to invite you to this, what God is saying, that matters to him. And that the opportunity to pray and hear what he wants for you. There's actually a verse that says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. And for some people that's very hopeful, because you're not going to get it on your own, or when we're bent toward vengeance, that can cause terrible things to happen. But knowing the Lord has a plan for justice and all things restored and recovered, and that your suffering is not in vain, and that you can, even when you are trusting in him, participate in his justice for others as well, by properly understanding the anger, what do you call it? Like anger trigger in you. He's placed it there for matters of true justice. And so we can get bogged down in our own kind of wanting revenge. But if we actually can leave that with the Lord and hear from him how he wants us to operate in justice in the world, that's a complex discussion. But I also want to give it as a matter of hope, that it's not just forgetting what's been done, but that God cares about it as well.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly where that turning point of coming out of anger and finding peace can come.
Absolutely. So we're going to leave that invitation with you. And as always, going to invite you to further conversation. These Wednesday live chats are just little snippets, but please do reach out if it's something you wanted to chat about. Both Katie and I are available for mentoring in matters of faith and life. We have our weekly groups that you can find at youngparents.ca. But if this has been an invitation that is appealing to you and you want to explore it more, please reach out. And we just say bless you and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay. Bye for now.